Let's get started by making connections to our keyboard. On the back of the unit, you have a USB connection. For most of us, that's how we're going to power the unit and communicate with it, plugging in a USB cable from there to a USB port on our computer. If you have a sustain pedal you're going to use with the Axiom, plug that in now before you turn on the unit, because the Axiom will automatically identify the polarity of your pedal, whether it's Yamaha or Roland polarity. It will identify it automatically, and you won't have to figure out how to make that work later. So plug it in before you turn it on. If you're using the Axiom as a MIDI controller, not a USB controller, then you're going to need some power, and the power supply is not included in the package. You'll have to get a 12 volt DC power adapter with a center positive connection like shown in the little picture there on the back. But for the rest of us, we'll just plug in that USB connection, sustain pedal, and maybe a MIDI cord or an expression pedal and get going. This is a plug-and-play device on both Windows and Mac, so once you plug in, you shouldn't need to load any drivers to make it work. However, it can't hurt to check for drivers if you want to check if there's a newer driver that fixes bugs or something, or if you're on something like Vista that might not be in the box with your Axiom. To do that, we're going to switch to our web browser and go to maudio.com. We'll go to Support, and then Drivers and Updates. Once at Drivers and Updates, go to Keyboard Series, Axiom 61, and pick our operating system. So if we pick Windows Vista 32-bit, we can see there is a driver, and it's dated 12/31/2007. That might be newer than the one in your box. There might not even be a Vista driver in your box, so there you go. So you could install that first and then plug in the keyboard. So run that first and then plug in your keyboard. To test whether your keyboard's working or not, a few things you could do. You could check in your device manager on Windows or in Audio MIDI setup on Mac. In Audio MIDI setup on Mac, we can see that the USB Axiom's in the middle of the screen there. It's not grayed out, so that means it's working. It's also a test setup feature, so if I click that and play some notes on the keyboard, I get a little beeping sound saying that it's working. Or I could use a program like MIDI Logger. Open up MIDI Logger, and a little freeware program that when I hit keys on the keyboard or turn knobs on the interface, all the MIDI notes that are generated, or sysx data or whatever they are, comes flying by. There's a similar one for Windows, which you can get from the maudio.com website. If you go to their knowledge base and search for MIDIOX, MIDIOX.com, you'll come up with this little program that lets you do the same thing. You can have your MIDI data streaming by as you turn knobs for testing. Not necessary, but nice to know, and sometimes you just can't figure out how to program something, and you can see the MIDI data you need to type in some box somewhere using one of those programs. That's about it. Should get you up and running.